Hello again to this tutorial about positioning and resizing an existing UI in Escoria or making your own. In the previous episode I showed you how to create your own folder with your own UI and how to enable it in the set in the plugins. So as you can see, mine is enabled right now and I'm ready to start tearing it down and modifying it. The first thing that you want to know is how does this UI materialize in the game? And I can see that if I open this folder, I see two scene files, which are usually the entry points for anything you want to do in Godot. I see game.tscn and verbs mouse icons.tscn. So which one is the most important? Well, I can guess that verbs mouse icons have to do with the, like the name says, the mouse icons, and it's probably knowing this UI. It probably has to do with the when I right click and it iterates through the actions, through the little cursors that are used by the mouse. So I'm just going to ignore that one, and game.tscn has a more promising name because it sounds more general. Game sounds like a top level thing. So I'm just going to open this one, and this is what I see. Very promising. And I recognize straight away the UI that I just saw in the game. Let's look again. So yes, I can see my inventory button at the bottom, I can see the menu button. If I click on the inventory, I have this panel that appears and that I see here. So I think that's what I want to work with. So by the way, notice how there is a little button below the menu button and a go button that do not appear here. Don't freak out, this is added through code and we will see that later. That's why you don't see them. It's the engine that adds those buttons on the fly when the game starts. It might cause us little issues in the future that we'll have to fix, but for now we can just ignore it. So now let's have a look at the tree, at the hierarchy of the scene tree. I would like to explain something that's a bit counterintuitive. It's that in Escoria and more generally in Godot, it's not the game that contains the UI, it's the UI that contains the game. So it's a bit of a shortcut, a punchy punchline to make you realize that if you think about it, the UI is the top level thing in any game. For example, the UI is going to display the start new game button from which everything starts, from which the game starts. The actual game has not even started until you click new game. Maybe you had a shortcut, maybe you had an animation, a splash screen, but the game starts from there. So my point is that the UI comes before the game. And same thing applies inside a room. Like I could totally maybe not see any background, not see any character when I enter the room. Maybe nothing is loaded yet. However, the UI would be already loaded. I would still need a way to open the menu. So again, the UI comes before the game. And that's why if you look at the scene tree, the game is at the very top. It contains the camera, which has nothing to do with the UI, but again, all the game elements need to be there. It contains what's going to be needed to display the dialogues when the player speaks to other characters. And among other things, it's going to contain our UI. And if I click on this button, and if I click on the panel, and if I click on the menu, I see that everything is contained in there. So I'm going to focus strictly on this node, and I must disregard the other nodes. Try not to break anything anywhere else. Later, when you know what you're doing, you can break them. But for now, you need to focus on this, and you need to not mess with this canvas layer. We will also see later what it does, but for now you need to focus on the UI. So now let's have a look. I see something called horizontal container. I see something called vertical container. I see something called spacer that's in between. And it's a bit scary because it smells straight away like it's all about layout. It's about positioning stuff on the screen. And in Godot, I hope for you, and you can pray to God that you understand how the positioning works, how the layout system works. If you don't, then an absolute must-see video is this one by Code and More called Godot Basics Anchor Margin and Continuous. Absolute must-see. Watch it several times. It's superior to many other videos. It has clear chapters. They are clearly named. It clearly shows you what happens when you move the mouse, when you change every property separately. Instead of giving you recipes to get immediate results and that you don't really understand what you're doing, it shows you really in detail the theory of what you're doing, and it helps clarify it in your mind. So once again, watch this video. Having said that, a note on positioning for you. If you watch my previous videos, you might have chosen to go the way of having a window with a fixed number of pixels horizontally and vertically. And by that I mean, I'm talking about the aspect ratio. If I use this, what do I mean by aspect ratio? If your game, for example, is 640 or 320, doesn't matter, by 400, that's your screen. But some people deal with the fact that, for example, some devices have a wider screen, and maybe this will still be 400 pixels, but maybe this will be, I don't know, whatever, this. And because of that, instead of having black bars on the sides, like I have chosen for my game, they decide that the game instead should stretch to the sides to fill that area. And it's very important when it comes to the UI, because that means that your UI needs to be what they call responsive. It's a very famous problem in web development, for example, when you use CSS. The UI will resize according to the aspect ratio of the screen. I will not deal with this here. I will assume that your screen has a fixed resolution and a fixed aspect ratio. That's very important because it's going to simplify a lot of things for me. But if you decide to go responsive, then you must find your own way. And I'm telling you this because in this specific case, if I start from an existing UI, it is built to be responsive. This UI that you see is built to react. If you resize the window, the game's window, I cannot show you right now because I've already modified the demo game for my own purposes, but you can try. If you resize the window of the demo game, you will see that the buttons, for example, stay at the bottom, and if you enlarge the window to the sides, left or right, you will see that this button there sticks to the right, and this button there sticks to the left. And so on and so on. The whole thing sticks to the bottom, no matter how tall the window is. So most of this is meant to make this whole layout work and to be responsive. We will not need that. In the next video, I will show you how to stick to what's absolutely needed for your low resolution pixel art game.